All righty, well, let's get going here. We got Eddie going to help us sing, and then I'm sure we've got a tremendous Sunday school lesson this morning about Nebuchadnezzar, and none of us can still spell it, but anyway, it's all right, and it'll be good. So anyway, thank you for being here on a holiday weekend. When you've been doing this a long time, you kind of figure on holiday weekends, it gets a little scarce sometimes. So we'll take this on a Sunday morning. That's good. Van route a little down this morning, but Clyde was on. I said a little bit ago, he's tall enough we could count him as 4 kids. Huh? That would work. Okay, prayer requests this morning. Let me give you those. If you would please continue to pray for Nikki, if you would please. That's important, Nikki Moore. Also, the Stottridge family, continue to pray for them. Pastor Tracy Fowler up in Canal Winchester, he is having quadruple bypass surgery on Wednesday. So pray for him, pray for Miss Reese, his wife, pray for the church. And so that's happening on Wednesday. That kind of come out of nowhere, I think. Pray for the Hilton family. There was a young mom there, 30 years old, that just unexpectedly passed away the other day. Pray for that family. And then Tony texts me a lot on Sunday mornings, and he'll say, hey, we're praying for you this morning and all that. But he texted this morning, and Sharon has got a CAT scan on the 15th. And so they would like it if we would pray for them about all that. All right, other stuff. This is where you get involved. Anyone? Who? That is next Saturday, isn't it? Do you know for sure? I think. All right. Well, Brother Tony's church that he goes to, Grace Bible Church, they come to Chillicothe occasionally and pass out tracts and hold up signs and do some street preaching in front of the courthouse. I think that starts at 10 o'clock Saturday, if you'd like to, some of you fellows like to come and hang out with us, and that'd be all right. And so that'll be 10 o'clock on Saturday. We'll run over there instead of doing our normal soul winning and just pass out tracts around the downtown area while that's going on. All right. Someone else? Anyone? Okay, Eddie's chomping at the bit, so let me pray and get out of the road. Father, thank you for the morning. Thank you for those that are here this morning. I pray, please, that you'd be with us. Bless the Sunday school hour. Be with Kevin as he teaches this morning. I pray that you'd use him in a great way. And then, the Lord, just be with us all day long. Bless all of our church services. Be with these requests that we have. Do be with Nikki and continue to help and strengthen her and be with her. Be with the Stottridge family and help them in their time of loss, as well as the Hilton family. Be with both of them. Give them comfort, strength, and to be gracious to them, please. Be with Brother Fowler. I'm sure he's preaching this morning, and I just pray you be with him. He's served you a long time and just been a faithful man of God, and I pray that you'd touch him, help him through this upcoming surgery, be with the church and help them, and then be with Sharon when she has her CAT scan here in a couple of weeks. Pray all that would go well. And again, be with next Saturday's visitation time. Blessed during that. And again, thank you for all you do for us. Bless us now today in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Eddie's going to lead us in a couple of songs.
You'll stand with me, page 121. Bring them in. Do the first and third verse. Hark, 'tis the shepherd's voice I hear, out in the desert dark and drear, calling the sheep who've gone astray, far from the shepherd's fold. their cry. Out on the mountains wild and high, hark, 'tis the Master speaks to thee. Go find my sheep where'er they be. Bring them in, bring them in, bring them in from the fields of sin. Bring them in, bring them in, bring the wandering ones to Jesus. 81, draw me nearer. Do verses 1, 3, and 4. Sing it out. I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope and put lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to the precious bleeding side. Verse 4. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross the narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.
All right, everybody but Kevin can sit down. He's going to come up here and start getting his stuff ready. And I'll tell you this about the offering while he's coming to do that. If you want to give the missions, there's the canister on the back table. If you want to give the building fund, there's the little church house in the front, and that's what we've got. Now, is there a class going on somewhere for teenagers? Oh, is there a class going on somewhere for teenagers? All right, so she's got her guitar, and she's headed that way. Reminds me of Mary Poppins. Anyway, all right. Is it Mary Poppins? No, it's not Mary Poppins. It's the other one, isn't it? The Sound of Music. Okay.
Poor dog doesn't play the guitar. I wish I knew how to play guitar. Yeah, I give up. That's what. Poor bleeding fingers couldn't take it no more. Not in my ear. Lost Daniel. Where's Daniel at? All right, so I'm going to try to do a quick review. I wrote a ton of stuff on the board, so I don't know. I felt like I focused a little too much on Daniel last week, so I wanted to do a review. So King Nebuchadnezzar, the year 3-something or other, 605 BC, is he sieges Judah. And the Lord gave him the treasures, including godly things, and he takes it back and puts it in his treasure room and protects it. So even though he's a pagan king who doesn't believe in the one true God, he's protecting the treasure of the real God. And he also takes the young, the best, and the brightest of the teenagers and young kids back to his castle to teach and train. And after 3 years, he finds 4 to be better than the rest. And we find that one of the reasons they were the best and the brightest is because they held true to their beliefs and their faith. They didn't eat the king's unkosher meat and wine dedicated to false gods. So they held true to their faith, and God blessed them in knowledge and experience. And we see Nebuchadnezzar has his first bad dream, and his go-to guys are astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans and sorcerers, who he calls the wise men. And he requires them to tell him what his dream was and the interpretation. For some reason, even though he just found out Daniel and his friends were even smarter than them, he doesn't ask them, which I always wonder why he wouldn't go to the people he just found to be smarter than these people. He goes to them instead. And their reply is, no one can, not even the gods. And I mentioned the lowercase g that they refer to means they're not a real God as opposed to the God of the Bible. And they say no one can, not even their gods can tell somebody what their dream was and the interpretation of it. And we see Nebuchadnezzar's temper goes off, and he decrees that all the wise men need to be killed until somebody can tell him what his dream was and the interpretation of it. And the man that he puts in charge of this goes to Daniel and tells him what's going on. Daniel says, hold on, let me pray. He gathers his 3 friends, and they pray and to the real God for an answer. And of course, the God who created everybody, including King Nebuchadnezzar, and put that dream in his dream, knows what that dream is and know what the interpretation of it. So God answers Daniel and says, go to Nebuchadnezzar, tell him the dream and the interpretation. So Daniel goes there and gives him his dream, and his dream is a figure that's got 5 different metals, and it represents 5 different kingdoms. That's kind of what we talked about last week. So we're going to pick up in Daniel chapter 2, verse 46. And we see Nebuchadnezzar. So after Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar the dream and the interpretation of it, basically telling Nebuchadnezzar that he is the head of gold of the 5 kingdoms, the most strong, the most precious, and there will be 4 kingdoms after him that'll have different issues. Some will be bigger, some will be weaker, some will be more harsh than his. Now, after hearing this, we read in verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an obligation and sweet odors unto him. So we see Nebuchadnezzar worships Daniel, not the God that Daniel told him that gave the dream. And when Daniel went in, he made sure to tell Nebuchadnezzar that he didn't know the dream and the interpretation of it because he was so smart or he's so wise or anything like that. He clearly stated that the God that he worships, the one true God, is the one who gave him this dream and the interpretation of it. But Nebuchadnezzar kind of glosses over that. He don't know how to handle that, so he worships Daniel instead. In verse 47, the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods. And again, notice the capital letters and lowercase in that phrase. And Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. So we see again, he is kind of, worshiping Daniel. He throws God in there, and he's a God of gods. So he still doesn't understand that Daniel worships a single God, that there's only one God, there's not multiple. And notice the S at the end of the gods. God is not a God of gods, he's the God. And a revealer of secrets, seest thou could reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. So we see Nebuchadnezzar makes him a powerful ruler and puts him over things. He doesn't do anything for the God and say, well, we're going to worship your God, or, I'm going to think about worshiping your God and learn more about that or something. He worshipped Daniel instead of the God that Daniel worshipped. And it kind of reminded me of Joseph, right? So when Joseph was in his trials and troubles, he gets the Pharaoh of Egypt goes to him, and he interprets his dream, and it saves them from 7 years of famine, and he kind of puts Joseph in a seat of power over everybody. So kind of see that was the same kind of situation repeating here. Verse 49, and then Daniel requested of the king, and he said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat at the gate of the king. So notice Daniel remembers the three men who joined him in prayer and fasting to answer this dream, his three friends who held true to their faith and beliefs with him. And he reminds the king that, again, I'm sure in this conversation he has with the king talking about his three friends, that he reminds them that they're not the ones, it was the God and they helped pray to that gave the answer. So Nebuchadnezzar rewards these three too. But we notice that he keeps them separate, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat at the gate of the king. So Daniel is with the king, being kept close, and the other three are off in the distance as rulers. So Daniel remembers his friends, and they get promoted. So we see, when you kind of look at it and say, okay, Nebuchadnezzar kind of seems the light, seems to have recognized that the Daniel's God is the God, and how amazing he is, and I think, well, maybe he's starting to get converted, and maybe he understands that the gods that he's believing in, lowercase g, are not the true gods, that Daniel's got something going on here and has something more important, more powerful God than anything he thinks he has. But as we go into verse 3, or chapter 3, we read, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So he built an image, most probably likely is an image of himself that he wants everybody to worship. So much for believing in the God of Daniel. He's created a huge image of himself covered in gold, and he calls everybody to come worship. So in verse 2, then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, governors, captains, judges, treasurers, counselors, sheriffs, and all the rulers of the province to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. So we see very important people here. We think princes, governors, captains, judges, treasurers, counselors, sheriffs, and rulers. So he's gathering all the big important people that, today we think of people who we would elect. And in this list, a lot of these people we elect: governors, treasurers, sheriffs, rulers, all these kind of captains. These are all people that today we elect in America. So these are the important people that are running the country, and he gathers them all together. And then verse 5 and 6, they are told to worship the image, and if you don't, they will be tossed into a fiery furnace. And of course, they take this threat very seriously, because not long ago, he said, if you can't tell me the dream, I'm going to kill all the wise men. And the Bible doesn't tell us how many wise men actually got killed in that process, but I'm sure quite a few got killed. So they know when King Nebuchadnezzar has his temper comes up, he is going to hold true to that. So they take this threat seriously, and they all start bowing down and worshiping this image that he has created. And we jump to verse 7. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. So he's created this golden image, probably of himself, covered in gold, and we see everybody, they play some music, and everybody in the nations, all the language, all the people fell and worshiped the golden image that he created, and probably made him pretty happy to see all these people worshiping this thing. And then verse 8, whereas at the time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. And notice in Nebuchadnezzar's wise men that he called, Chaldeans is one of the groups that he called. So, and they said, oh, we can't tell the dream. Nobody can tell you what the dream is. No God can even do that. And then Daniel, with the true God, comes in and does exactly what they say no one can do. So I'm guessing a little jealousy here, and they're trying to get back at Daniel and his friends. So we go to verse 10. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man shall hear the sound of the music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whosoever falleth down not will worship, that they should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So they kind of remind him of what he decreed, kind of reminding them of what he had set up. In verse 12, there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the providence of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods. And again, notice the lowercase and the S. You got both of them on there. Nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That they brought these men before the king. So we see, these Jewish men were brought in, trained by the king himself. They are deemed smarter than the Chaldeans. And then when the Chaldeans can't tell Nebuchadnezzar the dream, these three play a part in that to be able to tell them the dream. So he sets up this golden image, and they find out that these three are not worshiping the golden image, and they look for a chance for revenge. So they go to the king, trying to remind him of what he said and his promise that he was going to throw people in the fiery furnace, and that these three are not worshiping the golden image. Of course, as we wouldn't if somebody were to set up a golden image and tell us to worship. As Christians and believers, we should not be doing that. We should not be worshiping any golden image. And we see in verse 13, we read Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury. So we see, when they couldn't tell him the dream, he kind of got mad, and he says, all right, just kill all the wise men in a rage. And now again, we see his rage come up again, his fury and rage. And he arrests these three. Verse 14, 15. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do you not ye serve my gods? And again, notice the lowercase g and the s, nor worship the golden image which I have set up. Verse 15. And now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hand? So notice the capital G used there. So he's referring again back to the one true God of the Bible here. So he gives them a chance. He pulls them into their court and says, I created this image. I told everybody to bow down. So now they're going to play some music, and that's when everybody's supposed to bow down. If you do it, you can go on about your day, no problem. So they could have just bowed down one time and did it in front of the king and say, well, yeah, of course, we're going to bow down, and just sit there silently and act like they're praying, and they could have gotten away without it. They would have been lying to God, right? They would have been bowing down to an image that they didn't believe in and defying the God of the Bible and worshiping something else, even if it was fake worship. And they hold true to their beliefs yet again, and put their life in danger, because the king clearly tells them that they're going to be thrown in a fiery furnace. And he says, be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So there's not going to be a trial or questions or a chance for them to refute or give a reason for it. He's going to grab them, take them to the fiery furnace, and he's going to get immediately thrown in. And then, so we see skip the verse 17, if it be so, our God, and notice the capital G again, whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. So we see an amazing display of faith here from these three. Nobody's ever been thrown into a fiery furnace and been saved. And they have no history, no record of God doing that kind of stuff up to this point. You know, this is something that God has never shown. They've not read it in their Bible and said, well, you know, Joseph went through that, so if he can do it for him, he can do it. Nobody's ever been thrown into a fiery furnace. But they know that their God is the one true God, and he is in control of everything and can do anything he desires. And they are holding true to their faith and willing to be tossed into the burning fiery furnace. And they know that God will do what God will do, whether they get burned or not. And verse 18, but if not, and again, but if not, so we read that and they say, in the verse before, he will deliver us out of thy hand, but here they say, but if not, so if they get thrown in the fiery furnace and God does not save them or protect them, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So they say, you know, even if God doesn't do what we hope he does and protect us and save us, we are still not going to do this, no matter what. We're going to hold true to our faith. And then we read in verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury, again, we see his temper flare up here. He gave them a chance they could have just worshipped this one time or just pretended to worship, and they'd have been scot-free. And they say, our God is going to deliver us, but even not, we're still not going to do it. And his fury pops up again, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach. So his face probably turns very red, and he just throws off in a very bad temper tantrum here. And he spoke and commanded they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it wont to be heated. So basically, that's kind of an idiom for heat it up as hot as you could possibly go. So we see he's just flying off in a fury, and he's angry, and so angry he's just saying whatever. He's like, if the fire is hot and burning, that's not going to be good enough. If you turn it up, throw yourself in an oven that's 400 or 900 degrees, like, is it going to make a difference? It doesn't make a difference. But he does this anyway. And then we'll jump to verse 24. And then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and rose up in haste and spake and said to his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. So, of course, we know the story, that they go in there and they are not burning. They're just kind of walking around in this open fire that's as hot as they could possibly make it. And the king is sitting there just waiting in his rage to watch these 3 get burned up. And instead, they're just walking around like it's no big deal. And he asks, did we not throw 3 in there? In verse 25, he answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. So we see in verse 25 here, he sees 4 people, and notice the fact that he says, like the Son of God. So we see, so maybe as he's sitting this, his anger and fury kind of going to go away and get lost in his amazement of what's going on here. And maybe he goes back to what Daniel talked about before he told him interpretation of the dream about his God and how powerful his God is. And so maybe his thoughts are going back to that time, and he's remembering Daniel and the power and the testimony of Daniel's God here. And that's why he calls the one the Son of God. And notice again the capital G. He didn't call it the Son of Gods or a lowercase God. He's using like the Son of the real God of the Bible here. Verse 26, then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. And then they come forth in the midst of the fire. So he says, Notice again, the Most High God. He doesn't use the plural, and he doesn't use the lowercase g. So again, he recognizing that these three are serving the Most High God, the one true God. And this is done, and when he did this, he gathered all the important people. So he's saying these things. He's calling somebody the Son of God. He's saying, you serve the Most High God, and this is in front of all the kings, or in front of all the important people, the sheriffs and the judges and the treasurers and the governors and all these important rulers and stuff are all sitting here. They're supposed to be enjoying these three who are contrary to the king's command, watching them burn, and instead they're hearing the king calling somebody the Son of God and the Most High God in front of them. And then verse 28, we see, then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath set his angel and delivered his servants and trusted in him, and having changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. So here he's kind of coming to himself, and he realizes he's making a statement to everybody, and he changes. He goes from calling it the fourth person in the fire, he goes from calling it, his original reaction is calling him the Son of God. And then in this verse, he goes down and he's in front of all these people, and he says, who has sent his angel. So now he's calling the Son of God that was in there an angel, kind of downgrading it a little bit, and delivering their servants. And he says, these three don't have to worship, and again, the lowercase g, except their own, capital G. So he's protecting them and standing up for the God of the Jews here. And if you think, and then we read verse 20, and therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. So something that made me, this is a king who believes in multiple gods, and of course they're not real gods if they're multiple, right? Making a statement like that. So just imagine if a ruler somewhere, Biden, or of any country anywhere, it doesn't matter what country, if it's America or not, would stand up and make a decree to everybody on national television saying that everybody in my country should not speak amiss against the God of the Bible, and be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made dunghill, because there's no other God that can deliver after this sort. So just think if one of the leaders of one of the countries, doesn't matter which country, were to stand up and say the God of the Bible is the one true God, and if anybody speaks ill of people who believe in that God, I'm going to go after them, and I'm going to turn their house into a dunghill and chop them into pieces and stuff. And stand up for the God of the Bible. Just think what outcry there would be in today's world for a ruler to say something like that. Quite a thing. And we see, so Nebuchadnezzar has done now a 180, right? He was just throwing these three in a fiery furnace because of their beliefs in something other than Nebuchadnezzar and his God. And now, after seeing the power of the one true God, he's now doing a 180 and saying anybody who goes against that God, I'm going to kill, when he just tried to kill the people who believed in that God. So he's totally done a complete flip, and now he's trying to protect the Jews in their faith and their beliefs. So we see him doing a complete flip here. And then we go to chapter, and then we read verse 30, then King promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So we see, they are being put in even more higher power. And notice throughout this, nowhere does he include Daniel in this. He knows that these four are all connected. They were all friends. They were all Jews. They all believed in the same God. They all showed the power of that God to Nebuchadnezzar in different ways. But nowhere in here does he say, go back to Daniel and say, and add Daniel. It's always Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego throughout this. He never adds Daniel anywhere in this. We go to verse 4. Nebuchadnezzar the king, and to all the people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. And notice again, capital G there. How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his domain is from generation to generation. So at some point here, Nebuchadnezzar had to question either Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and get some information from them about this God that they believe in. Because his statement here, how great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. So we see somehow they are informed, somehow he's informed that this God is going to have an everlasting kingdom, and his domain is from generation to generation. So now he's got a little bit more information. So I guess he sat down with either Daniel or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and gotten some information about this God that they believe in that's shown power to Nebuchadnezzar twice now. And so now, and again, think of this statement: if a world leader were to come up and say to all the people, nations, and languages, so everybody in my country, peace be multiplied unto you. I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God has wrought toward me. So just think of a president or something, or a king or a leader of one of our countries today to stand up and say, how great are the God of the Bible, his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His domain is from generation to generation. What kind of controversy? If they just said that in today's society on national television, and how the outcry would be against even that. And we see Nebuchadnezzar, now this is the second kind of statement that he's made where we can kind of say that. And he's kind of standing up for this God and making a command to all the people of his nation. And Babylon, the nation that he's ruling over, is one of the biggest that ever existed. Looking at the five kingdoms, right? The head of gold was the biggest, is one of the bigger, stronger nations in the world. One of the top five that God used. And he was the head of that, making this comment, not once, but twice, commending the God of the Bible and how powerful and important he is. And then we'll go into verse 4. And Nebuchadnezzar was at rest in mind in my house and flourished in my palace. So we see he's at rest in his house and flourishing in my palace. So after he makes these statements, I don't know, maybe is God blessing him here, and he has rest in his house and his palace is flourishing. So that would mean, kind of means his country is flourishing, they're being profitable. So maybe as he makes these statements, God is kind of blessing him as he's telling the nation that the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel is the one true God, and we should worship them. And if you don't, I'm going to come after you as king. And then verse 5, and I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and visions in my head troubled me. So now we see the second dream Nebuchadnezzar has. And again, it's a troubling one that made him afraid. And then in the other dream, he also kind of used the same phrase of being afraid. And therefore I made a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. And we see verse 7. Then came the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. You think after the last dream, when he called these exact same people in, and whoever survived his wrath after they couldn't give him the answer, he goes right back to the same people and says, hey, I had a dream I need the interpretation of. And again, if the conversation probably went very similar to the last one, right? We can't do this. our God, lowercase g, and an S on the end of it, can't do this. We can't give you the dream. Instead of him going back and thinking, well, last time this happened, Daniel was able to tell me, and his three friends prayed with him. Maybe I should go to them. They're a little smarter, and they were able to tell me the last one and skip these wise men that he normally calls. But no, he goes back to the same thing, and he gets the same result. They say they cannot make known interpretation of. But at the last, and we see at the last, keyword last, Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and notice again, lowercase g, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, again, lowercase g, and an S on the end. Before him I told the dream, saying, so he's changed his name now and made it a Babylonian name in the honor of his God and gods. So that's why we call him Daniel. We don't call him Belteshazzar. And the king pulls him in and tells him the dream, saying, Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. And notice, again, he says the holy gods, lowercase g, S, is in thee. He should know better at this point that it is not gods, plural, and it is not lowercase g, it's a capital G. And no seeker of trouble at thee. Tell me the vision of my dream that I have seen and the interpretation thereof. So instead of throwing a rage and saying, kill all the wise men again, at least he learns a little bit. And at the very last, he finally goes to Daniel and says, hey, I remember last time you were able to tell me the interpretation. So, and then he's forgotten all he learned about the one true God of the Bible. And he says, whatever gods you believe in and whatever you told me last time, so tell me my vision and the interpretation of it. And thus were the visions of my head in my bed. I saw and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. And he goes on to describe his dream, and I think I'll wait till next week to go over his dream and the interpretation and where that goes in King Nebuchadnezzar's life. Hopefully finish up Nebuchadnezzar next week.